No, the Drathkai weren't idiots. They just had the galactic equivalent of terminal overconfidence. When their scout ship landed on Virex 9, a sleepy human research outpost with a population of maybe 50, their war chief declared, "It's like raiding a nursery." Bold words from a species whose war cry sounded like a goat sneezing through a trumpet. They expected surrender. They got Susan. Susan, who worked in maintenance, wore pink Crocs and once disassembled a railgun because it was making weird noises. The Drathkai kicked in the door to the comms tower and were greeted by a 63-year-old woman, dual-wielding a wrench and a can of industrial foam sealant. She sprayed one in the face, caved in another's chest plate with a swing that would make a wrecking ball blush, and yelled, "You track mud in here, I swear to God," before chasing the rest out with a chainsaw she'd modified for a quiet operation. The Drathkai regrouped, confused. This wasn't in the data. Humans were supposed to be squishy, soft, diplomatic, not bootleg war machines fueled by caffeine and spite. But Susan wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was Bob. No rank, no file, just Bob. A bearded guy in cargo shorts who lived in the recycling depot and smelled faintly of beef jerky. Bob watched them approach the storage silos, sighed like a man who just had his nap interrupted, and emerged holding what looked like a leaf blower duct taped to a flamethrower. The Drathkai laughed. Bob turned it on. The next 6 seconds were a blur of fire, screaming, and one Drathkai yelling, "Why is it sticky?" as napalm foam coated the air. Their commander, now mildly on fire, ordered a tactical retreat to the landing zone, only to find their ship partially disassembled and repurposed into a giant crossbow. Fired by a teenager named Ella, who apparently failed out of art school, but had a talent for ballistic sculpture. The projectile, their own command chair. The lesson: you don't raid human colonies, not because they're strong, not because they're smart, but because they're absolutely, irreversibly unhinged. Galactica High Command received the distress beacon 15 minutes too late. The last image transmitted before the feed cut out was Susan, covered in soot, sipping tea from a cracked mug that read, "World's okayest engineer." She looked directly into the camera and said, "Send another team, I dare you." No, the Drathkai Council didn't believe the report either, at least not until they reviewed the footage and had to call in a linguistics AI just to interpret all the creative human profanity coming from a single old woman. The council chamber was silent as the screen replayed Susan throwing a fusion battery like a dodgeball, and Bob using a severed alien arm to stir his protein shake. "This must be edited," one admiral muttered, to which the technician replied, "Sir, the only thing edited is the profanity filter. It's struggling." Naturally, they sent reinforcements. 3 ships, 50 elite warriors, standard overkill protocol. They landed in formation, weapons drawn, armor gleaming, only to find the colony had installed handmade warning signs in bright neon paint that said things like, "Hope you stretched," and "We have Bob." The team split up. Classic mistake. Unit 1 approached the central dome and triggered what they thought was a defense grid. It was actually a surprise birthday cannon rigged by the colony's children for their teacher, firing confetti, marbles, and a high-velocity carrot that knocked out the squad leader. Unit 2 entered the power facility and was immediately flashbanged by a solar technician who mistook them for raccoons. Meanwhile, Unit 3 found the local tavern, assumed it was empty, and were promptly beaten unconscious by a group of retirees who decided bingo night needed a bit more excitement. Commander Jorik, watching from the ship, finally said the words no Drathkai had dared utter since the ancient wars: "Initiate full retreat." Unfortunately for Jorik, Susan had hotwired their ship's comm system to play Kenny Loggins' Danger Zone on loop and jam their signals. The engine startup was overridden by a voice recording of Bob saying, "I rewired your thrusters. Good luck turning left." Jorik tried to initiate an override, only for his console to emit a loud, buzzing noise and display a gif of a chicken doing a dance. In desperation, he grabbed his personal escape pod, launched it into orbit, and sighed with relief, until he looked up and saw a hand-painted message on the pod's window. "You forgot your luggage." The next second, the luggage impacted the pod at orbital speed. Galactic Command received the final telemetry. They issued a quiet advisory. Human settlements require reclassification. Risk level, catastrophically unpredictable. And from that day forward, Drathkai children were told bedtime stories not about monsters, but about maintenance workers and crocs with nothing left to lose. No, the galaxy didn't declare war on humans after the Virax-9 incident, not because they couldn't, but because after watching the footage, most species came to the same conclusion. Humans weren't soldiers. They were boss fight DLCs, accidentally left unlocked in the tutorial zone. The United Planetary Assembly held an emergency session where 12 delegates voted for sanctions, 6 voted for appeasement, and 1 just kept whispering, "We woke the wrong species," while stress-eating his own fur. A joint diplomatic mission was launched, 20 ships, 3 dozen translators, and 1 guy who brought baked goods just in case. They landed under a white flag, full ceremonial garb, and a formal apology. They were greeted by Ella, now wearing welding goggles and a shirt that said, "I void warranties." She waved cheerily and offered everyone lemonade made from something that immediately caused hallucinations in 3 species. The head ambassador tried to speak but was interrupted by Bob, who appeared mid-sentence riding a half-reassembled alien hover tank and shouting, "Yeehaw!" The translators exploded. The ships lifted off without orders. The galaxy quietly agreed on 2 things that day. 1. Do not antagonize humans. 2. Never, under any circumstances, let them get bored. Back on Virax-9, Susan sipped her tea and fixed the solar panel while humming Earth jazz. Bob was building what he claimed was a defensive barbecue pit, and Ella was repainting the word "welcome" on the landing zone in bright neon letters. And out in the stars, the Drathkai homeworld added a final entry to its military doctrine, one that would be carved in stone, taught in schools, and whispered like a warning in the dark. If you encounter humans, do not engage, do not investigate, do not speak. Just turn around and pray they didn't notice you, because if they did, it's already too late. If that left you questioning reality, stick around, subscribe, and let's get weirder.